Hello and welcome back to the 1am podcast. This is side B to episode 6 of the 1am podcast. If you've not yet watched the original episode, please watch it first off, as this is the continuation of episode 6. It's the B-side of it, so that's why you need to watch the original episode to then be able to watch this video, because it continues on the conversation that the episode 6 left on. But without further ado, let's get on to the B-side, which is going to be a bit more serious than normal. So if you're here, I hope you enjoy. But yeah, see you next time, I guess. What do you guys think about the fact that there's going to be a physical edition of these consoles and then a digital edition of these consoles?
What does that mean?
Jesus Christ, Josh, why are you sending me
Well,
words?
What it means is that you'll be able to. It'll be a digital console like Stadia and shit.
Ah, gross.
No, not like
no.
Stadia. It means that it'll be like instead of buying a physical
Stadia,
disc for games, you would buy those games digitally, but they would be saved onto your hardware. So you're not streaming the games.
Yeah, but what if your hardware just...
Oh, wait, so you just mean like downloading the game like you usually do?
I'm talking about, no, so it's the case of like the old digital editions and then the ones that have physical like disc trays in them. So like with the PS5, you got the PS5 and then the PS5 old digital edition. And then with Xbox, you've got the Series X, which has the disc tray. And then the
I
Series S
see.
that doesn't.
I mean, I don't really care. It basically just depends whether you want to have a disc shelf or not.
Well, no, because
Depends if you want to play the games you already have or not.
do you see it as like a long run thing or a short run thing?
I just see it as an option. Like, I don't have a disc drive in my new PC.
Yeah, but PC is a lot easier to like back up games on.
I mean, sure, but I just see it as like a progression of the times. People aren't holding onto discs anymore.
Yeah, but then again, okay, so like for example, a console is only used to play games, right? You can't use the internet on a console. Like you can't use the internet to the same extent that we can on a PC, right?
Okay, so in my eyes, that's even more reason to get rid of them. Because why have a whole bunch of this like plastic shit killing turtles and fuck when you could just have digital?
But then, how do you recycle the consoles that get left behind by studio like companies and because the PS5 is going to get abandoned. There is no like workaround with that.
Well, I mean, at that point, I guess you just implement a feature, or not a feature as such, but you implement a system where people might be able to like, I guess, transfer them or like lock them to your PS account that you can transfer.
It's already locked
Or
to
some
a PS
shit like
account,
that.
but then again, like the hardware itself is going to be abandoned by Sony.
Well, the hardware's gonna get old eventually. Yeah, sure.
No, so for example, a lot of games have like a second life in resale, right? For
Yeah.
example, I am starting to like discover like the GameCube library for myself.
GameCube?
Yeah, because of like resale, because the games get resold and that, right? How do you resell an old digital console when like in like 50, not 50 years, like let's say 20 years time, how do you sell a PS5 old digital edition? Because you're stuck with the games that were on the hard drive when Sony just stopped supporting it. And you can't get more games onto the hard drive unless you mod the console. That means you need like an active modding scene for the console to then reuse this hardware.
Wait, what do you mean they get locked to the hard drive?
Well, how else would you like transfer a game, like an old digital game?
Well, you download it and then you like
When,
have an
when
option
Sony
to say
stops supporting them, you don't get that option anymore.
what?
Okay,
Say it again.
So Sony eventually will stop supporting these consoles and they will close down the digital stores on these consoles.
Yep, cool.
It happened with the Wii.
Yep, cool.
So then what happens to an old digital console when you can no longer get any new games, and if you delete a game off your hard drive, it's gone for good?
So that goes back to what I was going to say or was trying to say before, which is you end up having a system, perhaps a third party who decides it's like viable to prop up the like server space for the games to be able to be downloaded and stuff.
But then again, so that's linked to your account, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you want to get more games.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Will you go to this once Sony doesn't care about it anymore, you go to this theoretical third-party website, link your PSN account,
Yep.
and then exchange games that way.
Okay, that assumes two things out of this. It assumes
Firstly, that people do that.
A, you're able to mod the console, and B, that Sony will be okay with missing profits.
Why would you need to mod the console if you're just exchanging basically the PSN store for this specific section?
Because that needs. How do you get that specific section onto the console?
You don't have to.
Why not?
It's like if fucking Epic bought Steam. It's just a slide over.
No,
Everyone
so-
just picks up their libraries and chucks them somewhere else.
So, for example, there's like online servers for Mario Kart Wii, right?
Yeah.
I can't just go onto Mario Kart Wii now and immediately go online. I essentially need to mod it. I'm pretty sure I need to mod it to then get access to those servers.
Mod it in what way? You're not describing anything.
You have to like get that connection between the server space and your console
Okay, by doing what?
by modding.
When you say mod a console, I'm thinking you take a fucking baseball bat to it.
That's not how you mod a console.
Yeah, no, but when you say modification, I'm talking about I think of inside parts.
I'm talking about like software modification.
Okay, well then what's to say that Sony won't like facilitate that transition if that's what they end up doing? That's what I'm saying.
Because they're giving up profit for something that they would see as like a dying market because they've got the PS6 out, for example, or the PS7.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, they don't give a shit about the PS5 because they're getting money from their newer consoles.
Yeah.
So why would they support a console they're getting very minimal like profit out of? Because they would just shut it down. Because there's no like reasonable reason to keep it going.
Yeah, understandable. The question then becomes, as long as they're still making profit, would they not just handshake with the audience and saying we're not going to cuck you? Assuming they're still making like a bit of profit, as if they're not losing.
Well, you could say the Wii, right? They're making a bit of money from the Wii shop. They still took that down because it was like, in the grand scheme of things, it was better to shut it down than keeping any form of the servers running. Eventually, that will just happen to the PS5 or the Series S.
It depends how many and expensive the servers were, and also if they saw like a player-based reason to do it.
Well, you'd have
Go.
to keep servers up long enough for people to keep buying games. Plus, digital games have been known to have shorter lifespans because of licensing reasons. So therefore, we don't know whether or not the games will even stay up on these stores, and then whether or not the store itself will even stay up.
I mean, I guess, but relating it back to the actual issue at hand, which is digital console without a fucking disc system.
Yeah.
It really is just a personal choice. If you are expecting this to be the last console you'll ever own, you'll probably invest in having, like a disc wall just for show. But if you intend to keep up with the times, does it really fucking matter?
So then what happens to that hardware when it's just left behind?
Well, you recycle it. Like,
Yeah, but
literally recycle it.
the only there's two ways of recycle. Oh, no, three ways of recycling it, right? There is literally just like stripping it down of all of its parts and trying to find a way of like reusing those parts in newer hardware. Or there are people that will just scrap the PS5 or digital editions that will just use them as spare parts for their PS5 physical edition. Or there'll just be people that will mod the console and that will be its second life.
None of what you said answered what I think I asked.
You said to like recycle these consoles, right?
Yeah, I'm talking like literal recycling, like melting them down into new parts.
That was the first one I said.
Okay.
But then again, those facilities need to be put in place to then allow for these consoles to be recycled like that.
Well, I mean, we've been recycling electronics and stuff for years.
Yeah, but it's a different, like, there'd probably be a different system than recycling a phone from recycling a PS5.
No. Motherboards are motherboards. It doesn't really matter how it happens. You just take the mechanical insides out of it, scrap the plastic for plastic, then you know, salvage what you can. I'm not an expert on how people do that shit.
I'm not an expert as well on it, and that's why I won't touch on it a lot.
Yeah, but I'm just assuming they know what they're doing and they can salvage what is valuable from it in terms of like material wealth.
Yeah.
I don't imagine it being super difficult as such. Like, I'm sure it's a complicated process,
Well, you
but in
need
terms
to do it without ruining any of the hardware, essentially.
Well, you can ruin the fucking hardware because it doesn't need to live anymore.
Like,
it just needs to be.
If you ruin the chips from it, then you're losing like valuable parts.
Not if you're gonna melt it down. Think of like off cuts of like a woodwork project.
Okay, then what do you think of the PS6 then?
Sorry?
So the PS6 will be the writing's on the wall that we'll have all digital consoles after this point.
Yeah.
Like, this is the last physical generation.
Uh-huh.
And so what happens to all those PS, like, 6s then? Because history will be lost then.
Okay.
So,
well, then at that point, it's up to the people that give a fuck to figure their own way around it.
It's harder to do that, though.
I mean, sure, but like, Rule 34, right? I mean...
No, because, like, to preserve something like a video game, especially ones that are only on consoles, you need to essentially have a way of, like, emulating that console and then emulating said game.
Yeah.
And so when, like, when a console, like, stops working, then you can't use the software to then play said game.
That's assuming that you're killing every single piece of software before someone has a chance to get a hold of it.
Well, no, because eventually they will just, like, again, stop supporting the store because it won't be financially viable for them.
Yeah, and again, I say that that can be shifted to someone else.
Why would they do that though? Because it's not financially viable to them. They would just stop worrying about it.
No, I'm talking about like random motherfuckers now.
Again, then they would have to go to Sony and be like, "Hey, Sony, can we like keep the PS6 store running?" And PlayStation would be like, "Fuck off." That's
No, not like keep it as a store running, but as a fucking essentially as like a PC emulator onto your PS.
Then you would have to then you would have to find ways of modding the console, and I mean software modding.
And at that point, it's someone else's problem.
Yeah, by then you need somebody who's going to like mod the console, and then you need finding ways of like trying to like track down copies of games and then put them onto this like thing, and then you need server space, so you need fans to then keep these servers running.
Well, my instinctive idea is thinking of it literally as a PC emulator. You have just web pages full of fucking games that you can download, and then you plug that into your PS however the fuck you do it.
Yeah, but you need those ROMs to begin with. For example, let's say you can't find a copy of like this one game on anybody's like hard drive, that game is just now gone to history.
Theoretically, I suppose, yeah.
So then what, like, are we just supposed to, like, be okay with letting go of history?
Well, I mean, if the game was good, you wouldn't not have it on anyone's hard drive, would you?
Well, there are games that are good, but then, like, for example, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was a video game that came out back in the 360 day, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, theoretically, they never re-released that game, which they're doing this year. And everybody that owned that game, their hard drives failed. That was... A lot of people say that was a really good game that will just become lost to history because it's an old digital game.
So what you're doing now is you're providing situations in which it is very unlikely to happen. For every 360 on the planet, including dedicated collectors who would take God knows how much care of their systems, to have them all just randomly fail for no reason. That's highly unlikely.
I'm still giving a scenario.
I understand your point, but you then start looking into things that are just so unlikely to happen that it doesn't even matter.
Okay, then what about... So PT, for example, right? Let's say people deleted that game off of all their PS4s. There's no way of getting that back.
Yeah. My point still stands. If
How?
people like the game enough to keep it on their hard drive, and not to mention the fact that there are so many hardcore collectors out there that are going to be finding this shit for God knows what reason, there's always a highly likely scenario where at least one still exists.
No, it depends on the situation. For, like, let's say that people weren't told that PT was getting taken off and that you wouldn't be able to download it again. And people deleted it because they needed more space on their hard drive, right?
Okay.
Then let's say everybody did, and then nobody fucking had it anymore.
Yeah, this doesn't address my point about the retard hardcore collectors who just collect shit for fun. They will have it because that's their hobby.
Yeah, but if they didn't if they hadn't, like, for example, if you were to put a demo on your hard drive and you are a hardcore collector, would you keep that demo on if you thought you could get it back easily?
Yes, because I'm a hardcore collector, and a part of my philosophy is having everything downloaded, because that's what I do. I collect shit. Think about it like this, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, like, guns, right? They still work in the modern day, no matter how old they were made.
Yep.
There are, I think the number is roughly 24 million German rifles from World War II.
Guns are different from video games.
Sorry?
Video games are a lot harder to keep working.
Understandable, but the point is that even there are so many of them, right? There are 24 million of these things that were produced in 1945 of World War II.
Yeah.
Yet they're still collected and kept up to date in a way by a number of people just because it's fun for them.
Yeah, but it's easier to update them. Like,
that doesn't mean that it would prevent anyone from doing it to a video game.
For a movie, right, it's easier to keep a movie up to date and to keep that history. With games, you need to find a way of emulating the hardware it's on, then emulating the software it's on, to then allow it to work on newer hardware, or to get the source code, which could be fucking deleted, to then port it to newer hardware.
Okay, but that doesn't detract from what I'm saying. Someone out there is dumb enough in their own special way to want to do that.
But what happens when it starts to rot?
That has nothing. That's irrelevant because my point still stands. Someone will figure it out, just for fun.
And if like, what about the ones where they don't get it in time, where it's just lost history?
Did you forget what I talked about before I just said the thing that I just said?
Again, I feel like you're just using the collector's statement to be like, nah, we don't have to worry about it. The collector's got us. I'm
not saying it's not something we have to worry about. I'm just saying, like, it's such an unlikely eventuality that something would just casually be neglected from existence due to that type of person.
What about like lost media for like TV shows and that?
What do you mean?
So there was a Halloween special for a TV show, right? Which was like lost media for years because it was aired once and then never again.
Yeah.
And it took like years before somebody found like that they had a VHS copy of it.
Yeah.
And if nobody
Someone had it.
And if nobody had that VHS copy, it would have just been lost media.
Once again, I feel like you're leaning into intangible variables.
One person not having
are
a
incalculable.
VHS is not a like intangible thing to happen.
It is when you're selling, millions of copies of games per year.
Yeah. So what about the people that try to buy into these consoles afterwards, after the fact?
I mean, fucking good luck to them. They should know what they're getting into if they're trying to buy an old console that obviously doesn't run on the standard shit that they used to back in the 2000s.
But for example, we can go online now, and we can get a game from older hardware, and it will still work, right?
Generally, yeah.
Because with the disc, like if you've got like hardware that works, and then you've got a disc for that hardware that will run that software, it will work, right?
Yeah.
So now you get rid of that disc, so you can't necessarily sell these old games unless you just sell the whole console or just the whole hard drive. And then like now you have the people that are growing up and then being like, I heard this console was like really well known for its games. I want to try out these games.
Okay.
And so how do you make it better for them?
Well, in that instance, you'd probably want to look towards the games that are being played. Because if someone if my kid sees a picture of Horizon Zero Dawn and is like, yo, I want to play that, I'll just be like, okay, let me get it up on Steam instead because it was ported. It really just depends in that case whether like the game was so valuable that it was shifted up elsewhere. Otherwise, at that point, you do have to start doing the fucking hunting, which just becomes your own hobby. If what you want is to play this one game, for me, it's Jack X on the PS4.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go fucking buy a PS4 just to play that single game.
Yeah.
I'm dropping $400 on a single thing to play a single thing.
But what if, like, for example, let's say when the PS5 launches, they cut off the PS4 store, right?
Yeah.
So how are you gonna get it?
Well, I'm gonna go fucking find it, aren't I?
You're going to track down a physical copy, which is going to be like really expensive, so it's going to become your white whale. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah. If you obviously care about something so much that you're going to fucking deal with the bullshit that is a no longer supported platform, well, then you're going to deal with it, aren't you?
Okay. Yeah. No,
you'll either finish your fucking life's duty or you'll just give up.
I'll agree to disagree, but I do see where you're coming from, and I see where like the statement that you're saying, and I see where like it is more of a choice, but I still believe it's bad for like trying to conserve history. But I'll give you one last thing. What do you think about streaming games?
If it fucking works, cough everyone that's tried to do it so far, then it's fine. It clearly doesn't work at the moment, so people should stop fucking trying to make it work.
No, because like for example, it was like streaming games was a thing that was back in like the SNES days. The games that
what way?
So there was it was a satellite. So you get a cartridge, you would put it into your SNES. And there'd be a broadcast that would go to your SNES, and it would you would either play a game or you would like the news would be on, for example. Like they had a version of Legend of Zelda that had a live like narrator with it.
Interesting.
But you can't play that anymore because there was no way of recording it. So
That's just unfortunate technology of the time, really. There.
No, but that's lost history.
Well, I mean, it isn't because we know about it.
We know about it, but it's still lost. For example, like we know about like people that like we know about the founding fathers, right? We know they exist, but we also have like writing to show that they exist. We have like notes and personal like messages that they sent back and forth, or like documents that they signed. That's all part of the history of it.
Yeah.
Games, being able to play a game in the state that it was created for, is a part of that history.
I do not agree with that analogy.
Okay.
Because being able to... What you just said was having a piece of paper is like talking to George Washington, and you're trying to relate that to playing the game is like playing the game. It's a bit different.
No, but you get an idea of what he was like, right?
Sure.
There's no records besides the fact that it happened to like tell you about like the.
Okay, what's the difference between those pieces of paper and like an IGN article? They're both records of what happened.
Yeah.
They're both instances of, they're describing how it worked and what happened, and it's passing on a physical memory of the shit. Like, I sort of understand what you mean by wanting to preserve what it is, but it's like, do we really care about something so monumentous in the grand scheme of things?
What about movies then?
Was the movie important to humanity in any way? If yes, probably try and fucking figure that one out. If no, you can just mention it as a popular movie of the time.
But that's like, for example, there are the. Fuck, why am I gonna mention this? Okay, so there's a very old animation, right? That's on a that's on a reel, right?
Yep.
And it's being preserved and it's being locked up and it hasn't been played for years because it's preserving that piece of history.
Yep.
So what's the difference between so that's a physical thing that we have to be like, hey, this existed, but we're not playing it because it will damage it.
Yep.
So are you saying that we should just throw that away and just have the written piece being like, yeah, no, this existed?
No, because it is clearly important to someone who then collected it, who then passed on their passion of collecting it to another person.
So are you saying like museums are just people that like really like collecting shit that...
Yep.
Just museums are essentially just private collections available for show. And if you're interested in the things that they are showing, you're going to take passion in trying to preserve those things as well.
But don't you also learn from that history?
Yeah, and that's why those people exist.
And then isn't seeing that like history as it was meant to be, or as close as what it was meant to be as possible, better to learn from the past than having an article being like, yeah, no, this happened?
Okay, sure. But in what way does that apply to digital consoles when people can look at a PS4, hear stories that the PS5 in the grand scheme of things wasn't that much different?
Like, let's say there's a groundbreaking game on the PS5, right?
Okay, yeah.
Let's say this the PS6 because it makes the argument a bit easier for me.
Yeah.
So let's say there's a groundbreaking game on the PS6, and then 100 years later, people go back to look at this game, this groundbreaking game for this time era, and people want to see what was so groundbreaking about it. But at this point, all these like hardware has broken down, and there'd be people trying to keep these things alive, but just they can't anymore.
At that point, I suppose you would hope that the powers responsible would figure out would have a contingency plan essentially, because the literal just no longer fucking working part of it is a bit beyond human control.
But it would be
But along the same lines, if a groundbreaking game appears on the PS5, well, I'm getting to a point here. If a groundbreaking game appears on the PS5, that groundbreaking idea is hopefully carried to the PS6 in a way, a sequel, or like a remaster, or like like a student of a famous, of like the director or whatever, carries his ideas through, who is then hopefully carried to the 7 and so on, so that we never have to look back because it's constantly with us.
So then why do we look back to World War One? We had World War Two.
Personally, I don't. I don't find it a very interesting war. So you are correct. I don't do that.
But people do.
Yeah. Yes.
So you just like in that situation, we just don't allow them to have that ability to go back to the first, to look back onto it, to see where it all started.
What's probably going to happen is everything's going to get remastered or remade over and over and over, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
A million versions of like everything.
We're asking questions we don't have answers to. Is
I'll
what
be
we
dead
really
by
are
the time
doing.
this becomes an issue anyway. So.
The way that I see it is that with a disc, like again, physical media, it's easier to get a hold of it than it is with digital media. And that's why I'm saying that it's easier to preserve history that way.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's deep.
That, like, all merit that there could be people out there that care so much about these consoles and that these hardware and about these games that they desperately try to, like, find a way of preserving them. But it's easier when it's more accessible to people. Or accessible to those in the future to look back upon.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason why I'm against digital. And the fact that like you don't necessarily have full ownership on your games. I 100%.
My point to that really quick is like, yeah, they fucking steal your games. Okay, you sue them because there's probably a contract somewhere saying they can't.
No, they would, before like you use your console. For example, Steam, if they went bankrupt, for example, they technically can just like lock you out of your account. That's a part of the contract you sign when you make your account.
Fair enough.
So it's a case where like technically they could be set in place to make sure they don't get into court for this shit. And like again, digital, like it makes it easier for people, and it like in a way it can then again you've got like the raw data itself, you don't have to extract it from a disk, but then again you have to find like then you would have to have people that are so much into history and want to preserve the history of these games that they track down all these different hard drives and then find a way to extract the data from the hard drive to then put on like a ROM website.
And the reason I cite that as a likely occurrence is because people are already sort of doing that. Like, why do you think Pokemon like emulators exist? Because people have ripped the fucking code and put it in a place where people can play it wherever they want to.
But for example, we can't emulate a PS3, so we can't emulate
Yet.
the games from a PS3.
We can't emulate it yet.
But at the moment, it's so advanced that we need to be a lot more advanced to be able to emulate it.
That's I don't know. Maybe we just have like different visions as to what's happening. The best way I can describe it is you're asking questions that are reserved for people at least 10 years away. Because that's going to be at the very least the age of the next generation.
I'm trying to look in a situation where people are able to look back on generations and not just constantly look forward to where next pieces are. So, like, being a game developer, looking back to the past allows me to better work on games of the future. And therefore it needs to be that back and forth between the two that can make new games so much better. And if it becomes harder to get to that past, then there could be situations where people recycle old ideas because they think it's new, that's probably the wrong way of saying it.
I feel like
I understand. I understand that. And my response to that is, does that matter? Like, you can only have so many ideas. May as well reuse a few of them every once in a while.
Yeah, but you can, if you look to the past, you can build on those ideas.
Yeah.
For, let's say that that one of those, building bricks that we build upon just gets taken away because we can't look to that part of the past. And so it's trying to fill in that gap with your own work while trying to build upon what it was before. Or building upon what is already been done.
The question then is, how far away does the brick have to be before it matters? And that may vary between people.
Yeah.
Because if you've got, a tower, if you remove one brick from the middle, does that destroy the entire tower? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
It depends, but it just... Having that, having easier access to history allows that tower to have more reinforcements to it to be more unlikely to collapse when something gets taken away from it. That's how I see it.
I don't fully understand what you just said, because I think you said one thing and then immediately contradicted, but that's fine.
No, so, for example, what you're saying...
No, but you don't have to explain. You don't have to. It's fine. It's fine. It's. Don't worry about it.
Can I, just so I don't seem like a dick... So, imagine you've got, Jenga, for example, and those, blocks from Jenga are pieces of history.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. I was literally thinking of, a Lego or Jenga.
And let's say making it easier to go back to that past is reinforcements for that Jenga tower. So that when a piece potentially gets taken out, it doesn't collapse as easily.
Sure, but the way you're wording it means that the security of the reinforcements prevents the block being taken away from causing damage, even though the reinforcements should technically stop the block from being removed in the first place?
Yeah, that does make... Yeah.
That's what I was saying when you said something, but then you contradicted yourself, but it was all good because it made sense. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. And my analogy for that is, when you're playing Jenga, you take a few out, but you always have at least one connection between the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
One way or another, it's...
Are we still talking about video game consoles?
Yeah, we're still talking about video games.
We're talking about the philosophy of history with video games,
Oh, God. I didn't sign up for this.
Josh was here for gotcha and calling the Xbox One X a brick, and then he's gone. He pieced out.
I've just been sitting here listening to history.
Yeah.
I left school to avoid that.
No, we're talking about potential history, but we're looking at it on two different sides of how history should be done.
You're going to be a great boomer, Lachlan.
Shut the fuck up.
In my
gonna be-
day, the
He's gonna be a
Xbox-
great uncle, just sitting in the corner at Thanksgiving, going like, "All right, kids, talk to your uncle. Just be careful. He might lock you to the floor because he just won't stop talking."
in my day, we didn't have the Xbox 20.
Yeah,
We
bro.
had a brick.
we didn't have like fucking neural connections to our PCs. We had to use our thumbs, bro.
No, I look into the future and I'm excited to see what games can be, but I feel like we need to look into the past to an extent.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's just I put less weight on the requirement of finding the previous to then predict the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just put yeah. To rephrase what I just said for myself, I seem to just put less weight on events of the past to try and predict the future. Maybe that's just my personality, which is a reason why my life might be so fucked up.
Well,
But,
I don't
that's
feel like
not
it's a case of like history predicting the future, but a case of history helping guide the future.
Yeah, which is why I don't care about it too much, because a guide is only a suggestion rather than a
But some people need that guide,
recommendation. Yeah.
so we don't repeat the mistakes of history, essentially, or we don't repeat history.
Now we're making it sound like it's a bad thing.
What, like history, or like getting rid of history?
No, well, most people say don't repeat the mistakes of history because they usually, lead to wars and shit.
Yeah.
So
We're
we're just
talking
making it
about
sound
video
bad by
games.
accident now.
Essentially, the whole idea is I just don't want lost media.
Yeah.
Because lost media means somebody misses out, like in the situation. Essentially, my ideal world for video games would be that we have a way of like being able to preserve this history.
Yeah.
Like that's all I want. And I feel like it could potentially become a lot harder with digital consoles. That's just my feeling towards it. I could be completely fucking wrong. And if I am wrong, I will eat the words of today's me.
No, that would make you fat.
I'm already fat, Josh.
And
just
what
become
are
a
the
beast.
words? I'll pay that.
I would just become a beast.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a whole thing that we probably won't even have to deal with.
Turn you into a potato.
I don't know.
You spell.
We're really over time. I've just realized.
Yeah, no, this
This
might
is
be
2.5.
Yeah.
Fuck.
So I
This
guess
one might need some editing, to be honest.
I guess this this episode, which was went from us being like, haha, look at new console, to fucking yelling at each other, to
Fucking history lesson.
What we might have to do is cut this part out, make it like a B-side to this episode, and then upload there's probably maybe like a 1 and 15 minute hour, a 1 hour 15 minute episode of like the actual console bit. And then we take this as a B-side.
I'll see what I think about it.
Because this is really fucking long, and it has nothing to do with the fuck we were talking about.
It kind of does, but we got into like really big arguments.
We didn't even get into an we just had a philosophical debate, to be honest.
Like big debates, and then the argument with the Series S and X, and now Josh is going to space.
Memes.
And I feel like that's how we're going to end the podcast for today.
Yeah, that's the end. Us contemplating life.
And Josh going to space. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Josh. I feel like
he is rising to the future that we cannot see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ascend.
While we're down here trying to contemplate
the death of media.
He's there living the future, and that's I don't know.
That's all we can ask for from our boy.
Yeah. I feel like we went from like being really chipper and happy to getting like like yelling at each other, just being kind of somber.
Yeah. We realized what we'd done, and we're trying to fix it right now.
We realized that we both have. I guess that we both have cases. Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh well. Now we're just dragging it out.
Yeah.
See you later,
Thanks
everybody.
for watching
Bye-bye.
the 2.5 hour podcast, or shorter. I don't know yet.
Sponsor me so I get money.
Yeah,
See you next
thanks
week,
for
ladies and
watching.
gentlemen.
That one a different direction than most podcast episodes. Anyway, bye.
Yeah. I feel like a bored student.
Have a good night. Bye. And today we are recording at 12:25 a.m. Today I am joined with Josh, the person who's probably going to be taking off with his computer that is going to Mars, and Daniel, who lost No Nut November in the first 10 seconds.
Excuse me, I didn't lose, I just didn't start.
No, it's non-stop. No, November.
Oh fuck, wrong.
Now
what up,
that's a
gamers?
different sort of challenge, fuck.
What up, gamers? How we begin? We definitely haven't been talking for the last like 26 minutes.
Yeah,
26
everyone at home, this podcast actually started like half an hour ago. You just don't get to see it.
You just can get to see us babbling about for half.
Yeah.
So how is everybody?
Depressed.
Oh,
We're doing good. Had my last exam today, I'm done for the rest of my life. Time to die.
Well, are you doing